Welcome. My vagina is having a really good day. I am really thrilled and honored to be introducing one of my heroes, Eve Ensler. Eve is in town performing the Vagina Monologues at the Wilbur Theater until April 1st. I would ask that everyone turn off their cell phones, please. Everyone probably has one. So I'm very honored to be here. We're very honored to have you here. On behalf of Harvard, I thank you for coming, and I thank you for all your work. What is remarkable about Eve is that she uses art to transform culture and public discourse, and has been wildly successful at doing so. And here at the Kennedy School and at Harvard is what we're all about, public discourse. Yet very few of us have the courage to really speak out on hard issues, and hard issues that matter, like race and gender. And more than speaking out, we have a lot of people are reticent to act. And that's another thing that Eve can serve as an example for us on how action can really transform public discourse. It's very, very important to act against these things. And what her art does that we need to do more of is raise public awareness. And above and beyond creating the Vagina Monologues, Eve also created V-Day. And V-Day is a day around Valentine's Day or on Valentine's Day that's dedicated to stopping violence against women. And in conjunction with this, she created a whole fund to fund grassroots programs that are doing really, really good work on violence against women all over the world, trying to stop rape, trying to stop sexual harassment and domestic violence. The rally this year in Madison Square Garden was 18,000 strong, which is really, really fabulous. So I don't know how many of you have yet seen the Vagina Monologues. It's a really wonderful thing to see. It's a whole experience. And the beauty of it is that it takes the awkward moment of just saying the word vagina and then examines that in all different ways. And it makes it into this participatory event in which cultural boundaries are really melted. We watch the monologues and we realize how related we really all are. And it's a wonderful thing. She interweaves humor with grave seriousness as she invites us to examine our own relationships to our vaginas. And we realize, as we realize that it's a hard thing to say and that it's something we don't usually say, why? Why is it awkward? Why do we flinch when we say this word? And then we start thinking about how much internalized sexism is located right here and inherent in this problem. And we realize that not only are our vaginas the site of our violation very often, we are reminded of how often we are violated, physically or psychically, whether you're reminded that your vagina is not precious but rather fungible. In fact, we can buy one in our society, and that affects each and every one of us. I saw the Vagina Monologues last year at Brown, where my stepdaughter was co-producing it. And afterward, I integrated some of the material. I bought the book and then integrated some of the material into my class on violence against women. This is my favorite quote from the book. So this is Eve in the book. Quote, when I returned to New York from Bosnia after my first trip, I was in a state of outrage. Outrage that 20,000 to 70,000 women were being raped in the middle of Europe in 1993, and no one, as a systematic tactic of war, and no one was doing anything to stop it. I couldn't understand it. A friend asked me why I was surprised. She said, over 500,000 women are raped every year in this country, and in theory, we're not at war. So much for theory. We are at war. Thinking about our vaginas, our bodies, our sexuality, ourselves, is critical to a movement to change the male war against women. Thinking about our vaginas makes us think about levels and layers of violation, and hopefully gives us a sense that we do indeed have something precious, that we are someone valuable, and that our integrity and that of our sisters is worth protecting. Reclaiming our bodies in this way is a crucial step in reclaiming our self-esteem. Finally, I want to compliment the brilliance of Eve's holding the Vagina Monologues on Valentine's Day. The reason that so much violence against women is tolerated in our society is that it's committed in the name of love between intimate partners. And that so often that that masks the reality of it as a criminal act, and people just can't see it for the crime that it is because it happens between intimate partners. So something to kind of think about. So I thank Eve from the bottom of my heart for her work in deconstructing this obscurity. And what Eve has done really is nothing less than start the vagina revolution. I now present you Eve Ensler with much appreciation for her terrific work on ending violence against women.
Hi. Thank you so much. What a wonderful introduction, and I'm thrilled to be here at Harvard and thrilled to be in Boston. I've had 2 shows here so far, and it turns out that Boston is an extremely vagina-friendly city, which is excellent news. As a matter of fact, it's verging already on becoming a vagina holiday zone, and there aren't many of those in the world, so this is excellent. I thought of what I wanted to talk about today, and there's so many things I could talk about because the last few years have been rich with experience and rich with coming to understand things I didn't understand before. What I thought I'd talk a little bit about is how the Vagina Monologues came to be, and then how V-Day grew out of that and what's happened since then. Because to be honest, I've been an activist all of my life. I've fought as a feminist for many, many years. I've fought very hard in the nuclear disarmament movement. I've been an activist and I've been a writer, but until the Vagina Monologues, I didn't really find a whole way to integrate my writing self and my political self. And the Vagina Monologues for me has been an incredible gift because somehow both these parts of myself found their way into fusion, and I feel right. I feel right for the first time. I feel I'm in right relation to the world, and I'm not kind of battling between, particularly living in a very commercial society. It's been hard as a political playwright to find venues and places that will produce my work when political work, as we know, is not often commercial work. And the miracle of the Vagina Monologues has been that somehow it caught on commercially, and people are making a lot of money from it. And that in itself is something way beyond my understanding, why this piece, of all the pieces I've written, which is about vaginas, has become a commercial success. Go figure. I don't understand that, but I'm blessing it every day. And I think one of the reasons it's happened is because I based the Vagina Monologues on interviews with over 200 women. It was really an anthropological investigation at the beginning, and I sat down with woman after woman to listen to their story about their particular vagina, the history of their vagina, the biography of their vagina, which obviously is often the story of that particular woman as told through her vagina. And what happened when I started to create the piece is I put those stories out there and people found themselves because they were real women to begin with. And I think in many ways that's what has made the piece commercially viable, is that women and men see themselves present in the monologues. I have to tell you, when I started doing this piece, I had no intention of writing something called the Vagina Monologues. I was in a shoe store the other day and someone screamed out, "There's the vagina lady!" And I thought, did I grow up thinking this was going to be my life goal? I don't know. But it's happened, and I'm certainly proud to be the vagina lady. I don't know that it was a life ambition. I started writing this piece very accidentally, and I have to tell you, much of the process has been accidental, a divine accident. I was interviewing a good friend about menopause, and we got onto the subject of her vagina, as you will do when you're talking about menopause, and she started saying things about her vagina that really surprised me because she was a feminist and a very forward-thinking woman, and she talked about it being dried up and dead and ugly and forgotten. She wanted nothing to do with it anymore, and I went, well, really? And I then started to think, I have no idea what women think about their vaginas. And I would say to a friend, well, what do you think about your vagina? And every woman that I talked to said something more amazing than the next woman. As a matter of fact, the first woman I talked to said to me, oh, my mother used to call it a pussycat. She used to tell me, don't wear panties underneath your pajamas. You need to air out your pussycat. And I went, oh, my God. And it was really kind of the big beginning. And that led me to the next woman who would tell me something more either shocking, tragic, sorrowful, amazing. And then women would start to say, oh, you really should talk to so-and-so about her vagina. You can't believe what's happened to her. And that woman would say, oh, but you need to talk to so-and-so. And it became this wild vagina trail that I got sucked down on. And I haven't gotten off. And I don't know if I'm getting off anytime soon. But even then, I was not doing it as anything serious. It was more my own private investigation, and I would take notes and I would write things down. And it was really my partner who said to me that this is going to be your life work. I just feel it. You need to pursue this. And I kept saying, vaginas, really? All right. And I would then take it a little more seriously, and I wrote a couple of monologues, and I tried them out in some clubs way downtown, and people had this incredible response to it. And you can tell with your work when, people respond and they're kind, and then people respond and they're really effusive. And so I would try out a couple more monologues. And I had another play being done off Broadway. And the producer had heard that I was trying these things out, and he said, why don't you just try them out for 3 nights? And I went, and I was totally petrified. A, I had never performed before in my life. B, I was talking about vaginas. C, I had no idea what the piece really was. And like everything around the Vagina Monologues, it's been a miracle. It's been something that's come from some other place, and I really feel just privileged to be carrying whatever this thing is. I did these monologues, and there happened to be a critic in the audience. It was like a very way off Broadway kind of thing, and she wrote this big review, and it was the only time I think in my life that a critic has helped me. And it basically encouraged me deeply to really pursue it seriously. And then I started to really write the Vagina Monologues. And I got produced off Broadway that next year, and I mean, at the beginning, it was a completely different world than we're living in now. It was not a vagina-friendly world. Not that it is now, but at least people can say the word a little more than they used to. People told me to change the title. People told me I was insane. People said, you can't do something like this. But because it was way downtown, no one really cared. And I started performing it, and people came, and it started to get popular. And what I realized right away was that I was talking about something that no one had talked about before, so there was incredible excitement and exhilaration around unmasking and unlocking a taboo. And something was happening in the audience that had never happened in any play of mine. It was political. It was political. There was something palpable in the air where you could just feel people's lives being changed. And since the very beginning of the Vagina Monologues, that's been my experience. I really feel like I've interviewed women, I've listened to their stories, I've allowed them to live in me, and then I just put them back out for the world to hear. And then women see themselves and men see themselves in those characters, and then they start telling their stories to the person next to them, who tells their story to the person next to them. And suddenly this whole invisible history, world, just textures of our lives that have never been spoken are being spoken about. If I could tell you the number of women who have come up to me to tell me that they have never looked at their vaginas, never visited their vaginas, don't know what gives their clitoris or vulvas or labias pleasure. I mean, I'm talking hundreds and thousands of women. And it was very shocking to me at the beginning because I'm a feminist and I grew up in the feminist era, and you make assumptions that everybody just kind of came along with you, and no, they didn't come along. I mean, that's what this piece has taught me. What happened when I started to do the piece, I did it originally in New York, and it did well, and then I toured in these very grassroots venues all around the world. I went to Jerusalem, I went to Croatia, I performed in the anti-fascist theater in Croatia with these lights that I felt like I was under inspection, and I performed in Oklahoma City in these very small venues, and at that point, people were bringing me there, and it was a very daring, terrifying thing to do. In Oklahoma City, for example, they refused to advertise it in any of the newspapers there because all the newspapers are Christian-run. And we know Christians don't have vaginas, right? Anyway, what happened was these amazing, fabulous women from Oklahoma City who were Christians became subversives, and they went out with these fold-up pocketbook-sized flyers, and they waited for women at beauty salons and supermarkets, and it was all like, come to the vagina, let's put your back. And I performed in this venue way downtown, but I have to tell you, by the third night, women were literally pulling up in pickup trucks with their own chairs, and it became this huge, amazing event, and all these people started to line up. Every place I went, every night, women would line up to tell me their stories of abuse. And I hadn't counted on this. What happened in Oklahoma City, what happened in Jerusalem, what happened in every city I went to in America is that women needed to tell me how they'd been raped or battered. That's what the play opened up for them. And often, people would faint during the show. I can't tell you how many cities I've been in where women had memories in the audience and they would literally pass out and we'd have to stop the show. And it became overwhelming. And I made a decision that I was either going to stop performing the Vagina Monologues or I was going to do something about the fact that so many women had been violated. I was beginning to feel like a war photographer who goes into zones and photographs people murdering each other but doesn't intervene. And in 1997, we got together a group of wonderful women in New York, and we said, how could we use the Vagina Monologues to stop violence against women? And we came up with V-Day. And the idea of V-Day was Valentine's Day. It was very well chosen on Valentine's Day because, as Diane said, so much of romance is connected to violence. So-called romance engenders violence. And by no means are we anti-romantic, but we're certainly anti-violent romance. And we started to think of a day, Vagina Day, Anti-Violence Day, which will eventually be Victory Over Violence Day. And we wanted to create a movement, an energy, a catalyst, a decision, a determination to end violence. And the first year we decided to invite all the great actors we knew, and we asked them if they would come and perform. And what was amazing is I would say that 90% of the women we asked agreed. Whoopi Goldberg came, and Glenn Close came, and Susan Sarandon came, and Lily Tomlin came. It was outstanding. And we had no idea what we were doing. We had this huge venue in New York. I took $5,000 out of the bank and we put it down in the space. And I'll tell you, 3 weeks before the event, we had not sold more than 20 tickets. And we were in this total panic. And we took out a $40,000 ad in the New York Times on my credit card. And it was like a quarter-page ad. And I have to tell you, in 3 days, we sold the entire 2,500 seats out, and it was really the beginning of the miracle. It's been a miracle. And I use the word miracle because there's something really sexy about miracles. They're delicious, they're unexpected, they're mysterious, they're spontaneous, and you don't know where they come from. And that's been the experience of the entire V-Day movement since the beginning. We sold out Hammerstein Ballroom. We raised hundreds and thousands of dollars, which we gave away to local, national, and international groups to end violence. And then it began the movement. And the next year we did it at the Old Vic in London with British stars and Melanie Griffith and Gillian Anderson and Kate Blanchett and amazing women. And I can tell you that in London, they were standing up with V signs, you know, and on the front page of all the London newspapers the next day, because we always have women wear red boas, it's our signal, it's our symbol, there were seas of newspapers with red boas. So it just looked like vagina newsstands all over London. It was magnificent. And they raised lots of money for local groups there. And 65 colleges the first year, a wonderful woman named Karen Nobel said, I want to bring this to colleges and I want to help young women empower themselves in direct productions. And she bought it out the first year to 65 colleges. And all the money raised at those colleges went to local groups in those communities. All the money stayed in those communities to help groups in those communities who were working to stop battery, to stop rape, to stop incest, and to stop female genital mutilation. And the third year, it was in LA and 15 cities and 165 colleges. And this year, I'm awed to say that we did it at Madison Square Garden. We sold out Madison Square Garden, 18,000 seats. It was truly one of the most magnificent evenings of my life. And just to be in that stadium, which is a history of testosterone, to be there in this spirit of, it was called Taking Back the Garden. And we definitely took back the garden. We had 75 stars. We had women from Africa who are now standing up, who I just met in my recent travels, who are fighting FGM and who have started an alternative ritual to the cutting in Kenya. We had women from Afghanistan who I met on my recent trip to Afghanistan, extraordinary women from a group called RAWA, the Revolutionary Association of the Women of Afghanistan, who are right now, as we all know, under the most terrifying regime in the world. And having been in Afghanistan a few months ago, I can tell you that if you want to understand the end point of misogyny, if you want to know what it looks like when misogyny has had its way, go to Afghanistan. Because it is truly as awful as it could possibly be on the planet for women unless they decided to murder us all. And these women are brave, extraordinary women who are living clandestine lives. They are teaching schools, they are running orphanages, they are documenting the atrocities with video cameras under their burqas. And we're funding them now. V-Day is giving them a lot of money so that they can keep the women of Afghanistan alive. But anyway, they came to the garden and we did a wonderful, wonderful event with them. So this last year, it was at the garden, it was at 250 colleges and 50 cities around the world. And I just got back from an 8-city tour of V-Days after the garden, and it's amazing what's happening. That's all I can say. I was in Bulgaria, where the Vagina Monologues has been running for months in Bulgarian. And I was saying to someone earlier, one of the greatest parts about traveling and seeing the play done, it's now being done in 20 different countries, is that every country has made it its own. So in Rio, for example, it was this wild, sexy, passionate, just S&M kind of event where I was like, oh my God. And in Bulgaria, it was kind of like this post-communist, and it was just like perfect. Okay, we're in Bulgaria, of course, this is what would happen. And then in Paris, it was this sexy, single, right, we're in Paris, okay, and everybody has their own brilliant interpretation. Everyone has made it culturally relevant. They've changed the words and the language to suit that culture and to allow that culture to inform it. And in Bulgaria, I just want to talk a little bit about what happened, because this is what's happening all around the world, except for the Muslim countries, like Afghanistan. It hasn't been performed there yet, you can well imagine. Or in Pakistan, I might add. But they are part of the V-Day movement. And in Bulgaria, where it was very difficult to get the play off the ground initially, once it got off the ground, it really got momentum. And in all these different countries, what's beginning to happen with the play is it's being used as a focal point for political movements in those particular countries. So in Bulgaria right now, and all over Eastern Europe and a lot of Western Europe, all over the world, the sex trafficking has become a huge, huge, huge deal. And the number of women who are being sold into sex slavery around the world right now is shocking. It's shocking, particularly in the former communist countries where people are so poor, and it's really becoming the new kind of mafia economy. And in Bulgaria, I was literally taken off the airplane and brought to an interview with a girl who had requested to be interviewed, who was a young girl who had been sold into sexual slavery, and she was 20 years old. And her life was as awful as a life could be. And she had been raped when she was 13 by her father's best friend, and that had gone on for 2 years. And when her father found out, she was blamed, and she was exiled, and she was sent to Sofia, where she had no money, and where a police found her, and she thought she was going to be helped by the policeman, and he actually brought her into prostitution. And 4 months into prostitution, she was raped one night by 8 policemen in a room. And it completely destroyed her mind. And since that point, she has essentially been a sexual slave, where her body was, there were cigarette burns all over her legs, there were gashes all over her back, there were bruises all over her breast, and she can't get out. Because if she tries to get out, they will destroy her family. So she's in servitude. This is 2001, and there are sexual slaves all over the world. And that's a piece of what's going on with women in the world. I mean, I've gone to 17 countries in the last few months, and I have to tell you, it is shocking. It is shocking what is happening to women in this world. It is shocking. Whether it's the desecration of women in Afghanistan, when women are not allowed to work or be educated or leave their homes without being covered in a burqa, where they are murdered for a slight accusation of flirtation and literally gunned down in stadiums. I witnessed videos of this. Or Africa, where women are at, how many 2 million women a year, girls, are losing their clitorises without choice. Or India, where they are destroying girl babies and throwing acid on thwarted lovers, are throwing acid on their ex-girlfriends. Or in America, where 700,000 women are raped every year, and let's not even talk about how many women are being battered. It doesn't matter what country you go to. The desecration of the women is the desecration of us all. And if we destroy women, we destroy the species, because women are the life bearers. I will also tell you there is not a country I went to except for one where you could swim in the water. Every single body of water that I was near was polluted and destroyed. And I don't think it's coincidental. I think how we treat the Mother Earth is how we treat women. And if we were to re-perceive our relationship to women and understand that women are sacred and valuable and essential, we would also stop destroying the earth. They go hand in hand. I want to say that on the flip side of that, there are movements all over the world, women rising up and men rising up all over the world to say enough. And in Bulgaria, I was very pleased that 100 activists came from Kosovo, Serbia, Bosnia, Macedonia, all over the region to be in Bulgaria for V-Day. And none of these women had been together since either the Bosnian War or the Kosovo War. And one wonderful thing was that in Macedonia, there's enormous ethnic strife, as you all know. And Turkish women, for example, and Roma women and Albania women would never be together. Well, for the first time in the history of Macedonia, they have a group where all those ethnic groups are working together as women, as one. And 16 of them came to Bulgaria. And there was a moment in the evening where women were literally standing up from all these different regions saying vagina in their native tongue. And it was just amazing. It was like Pichka, this. And when it got to Macedonia, the women were just terrified. I mean, not only had they never been together as this group of ethnic mixed women, but they had never traveled out of Macedonia, and this had taken hours. And so there was this whole thing, and one Roma woman stood up, and she went, okay. She braced herself. She went, never mind, I can't do it. No, I'm going to do it. I can't do it. It went on for literally 15 minutes, and finally, she went, Nimja! And I swear to you, everyone in that place went insane. And for the rest of the day, it was Mimja. We just walked around, it was Mimja. It was like the liberation cry of the Balkans, you know. And, you know, one of the great things about art is that it gets around things. You know, suddenly people, when they're just saying the word vagina, can communicate in a different way than when they're talking about ethnic groups. Suddenly it was like each group being proud of the word that was about, you know, it was like Pichka and Pirte and Ninja and this, and it was like everyone was having a good time and everyone was laughing and everyone was forgetting all those things that were keeping them apart. And I think that is the advantage of art. That art, when people are laughing, what's that great Dario Fo phrase? He says, when people are laughing, their mouths are open and their minds can think. And I think that's really what it's about, that when you're laughing, something else starts to happen and you don't cling to polarizing ideas of white and black, good and wrong, men and women, yes and no. You're suddenly all in the same room and all that stuff melts away and you're laughing. You're laughing. You're there together. You're present as one. In Austin, Texas, this woman told me this great story about a guy who came to see the show there. Austin, if you can believe it. It was just in Austin. I love that. A guy walked in and he thought it was a chick flick. And because he saw the Vagina Monologues sign up and he was like, yeah, okay, a chick flick, I'm all ready. And, you know, and he sat down and he said to this woman, how come all these women are here? I thought this was a chick flick, you know. And she said, I don't really think it's a chick flick. And he started to watch it and he went, what the hell is this, you know? And finally, when it got to the Bosnia part, she said she heard an audible sigh. He just went, and then she said his whole demeanor changed. And he started to melt and relax and cried. He laughed. And she said by the end of the piece, he turned to her and he just grabbed her and went, I had no idea. I had no idea. And she said it was like he was like a born again. He just stood up and went, oh my God. But that's the power of theater. That's the power of art because it disarms you. You don't go in with your political armor on and your political position on. Or if you do, you get taken to another direction. It comes in from this way or it comes in from that way. And I've seen some of the most diehard people who were like absolutely oppositional or absolutely pronounced in some position come to the Vagina Monologues and suddenly they're like, God, or something changes. Something gets lifted up. Some wound gets healed. Some posture gets transformed. And I think part of our work as activists and artists is to stop judging people, whoever they are, to stop judging them, to stop saying you're this or you're that, you're the right wing, you're the left wing, you're the this or you're that, you know, because we've done it for so long. And being an activist my whole life and being someone who's on the, quote, left, I've always been about left and right, you know, we're left, you're right. But what I've seen doing the Vagina Monologues is that thousands and thousands and thousands of women have been raped and battered and mutilated and incested. And it really doesn't matter if they're right or left. they've been destroyed and hurt. And our job as human beings is to heal this hurt and to stop perpetrating violence. Because if we don't, we're just not going to go on. It's that obvious. I mean, when you go around the world and you see the desecration of land, I mean, Afghanistan, it's not even a country anymore. It's destroyed. Same with Bosnia. I mean, you just go through cities and you see the desecration of violence and you see the aftermath of violence. And you see what it's done to people, the heartbreak. You have people in Israel who are so braced for violence that they are violent now. We have to stop the patterns of violence. It's crucial, and particularly towards women's bodies, because if women are violated and continue to be violated to the degree, we are not going to produce anymore. We're not going to thrive anymore. We've already lost half of our capacity to create and think, living in such an environment of terror and violence. And I see in my travels that when people feel the capacity to laugh, and when their vaginas are empowered, and when their sexuality is empowered, they can think again. They can have ideas again. They can speak up again. They can exist again. And that's really our work. So I thank you for inviting me here today. I'm thrilled to be here today, and thanks.
That was amazing. Okay, so now we'll take questions and answers. There are microphones there and there. And if you would state your name before your question, but please feel free to ask questions.
I just want to say one more thing. I want to appreciate Billy Joe here and all the people at Harvard who did such a magnificent presentation of V-Day. I've heard nothing, but I've seen the tapes, and it's beautiful. Beautiful. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Al Skane. I'm a citizen of the community here. I'd like to ask you a little bit of the male side of this whole thing, because after all, a lot of this violence is really a male problem. How have you perceived the male population reacting to your work, your materials? And I've got a multifaceted question. You go anywhere with it. And how do you see supportive, concerned males on the planet interacting with this movement?
I love that question.
They belong there? How do you use them?
You bet. You are there.
What do you envision for them? You know,
well, I want to just begin by saying that I always say to women, if you want to meet a good man, come to the Vagina Monologues, you know. And I really mean that, because just wonderful men come to the Vagina Monologues. They're seekers, they're tender, they're funny, and they want to know vaginas better usually, and they want to know how to. I can't tell you how many guys have come up to me and said, "Oh my God, I had no idea," you know, and where their lives have really changed. A wonderful man who was 70 years old walked into my dressing room one night unannounced. He was in a trance. He just walked in and went, "Oh my God, I didn't know. Thank you." And he blessed me and he left. And a month later, his girlfriend came back with him and she said, "I don't know what you did, but it's fabulous." Many men are coming to see the show. And as a matter of fact, in Boston, I was really happy to see a lot of men in the last 2 nights. So I think, obviously, men are encouraged to come. I love that men are coming, and I think men can learn a lot and feel good and laugh. And in terms of what men can do about violence, several years ago, a few men started something called V-Day Men, and it's still a little needing pushing to get off the ground. It started, it went. But what I think is this. I think that men need to stand up and teach their brothers how to behave better. And they need to organize around it. I don't think women can teach men how to do that. I think men need to teach men how to do that. And I really would love to see a male movement rise up for men stopping violence against women. I dream of it every day, because I think men don't want to be perpetrators any more than women want them to be perpetrators. Men don't want to live in an environment where they are forced to be aggressive and assertive and dominant and know everything. Who wants that? It's a tyranny. And I think that I don't think most men are proud when other men behave badly. I think they feel terrible. You know, I think there's an internalized self-hatred that just keeps getting perpetrated when men see other men behave badly. And I love James Gilligan's book called Violence, because I think so much of violence comes from shame and comes from self-hatred. And I would love to see men really take this issue seriously and organize and work with men to say, how can we transform the energy and stop beating women up, stop undermining women? You know, I have a good friend who says to me, the next century is the time of women, and men are tired. And it's a man who says this, by the way, and they really need to rest. They need to rest. They need to rest. They've been busy too long. And in a way, there's some truth to that. I think the world would be such a great world for men if they would let women, allow women, embrace women, support women in a nonviolent way. I do, and I think they'd be happier. So my answer is, please start B-Day Men in Boston. Please get other men going. Yes.
Hi, my name is Ron Jenkins, and I teach classes often where I send students out to make theater out of interviews. So I'm very curious to hear you talk a little bit about what percentage of the words that you use are the actual words from the transcripts, and what you think about when you have the responsibility of changing it or adapting it to make it theatrical, which you have to do. And then maybe as part of that, if you could talk a little bit about the encounters that you have with the people who actually see you perform them after you've done the interview.
Well, unlike Anna Deavere Smith and other people, I don't have direct interviews. As a matter of fact, I don't use a tape recorder for that reason. I often interview people, and like one line or one movement or one little thing that they do will be the thing that gives me, like the woman in the flood, for example, who told me that she had a flood through her dress. That was the thing that started that whole thing. Then I would hear from another older woman who said she hadn't had sex for 40 years, or, do you know what I mean? And things then begin to weave them way into one monologue. Sometimes it's one woman's story, but I'll just take like a word here or a line here or a thought there. I rarely take blocks of dialogue, because what I like to do is think, it's the character. I work off the character. For example, I just did this new book that theater piece I'm working on is about how women all over the world enhance, mutilate, transform, and fix their bodies in order to fit in their particular cultures. So I've gone to 17 countries and I've interviewed women everywhere. And in Beverly Hills, if you can believe it, there is a vaginal laser rejuvenation center where women are tightening their vaginas and trimming their labias for cosmetic reasons. And I spent 2 weeks in this center, in the operations themselves, interviewing the women as they were being wheeled into the operations. And there was one woman in this vulva support group, if you can believe it, which was just fantastic, in this wild office, where all these women had gathered to share their after experience after their operations. And there was just this woman there who just touched my heart. And she was like, before the operation, Harry could never get hard. Okay? I went, there's the monologue. That's all I needed. That was it. That's all I needed. And literally, I went off, and that was the next monologue, because who would think? And it was so real. And I had a whole story, like she was going to say, doing this operation destroyed my life. It was the best thing that had ever happened to her. So I had a whole political interpretation that I was going to lay on it. And then she was so thrilled by the operation. And that took me in a whole new direction. But just for saying, before Harry couldn't get hard, I thought, okay, that's all I need. Thank you. So that would be an example of a monologue, kind of revealing itself. And in other situations, it's been a theme that repeats itself over and over and over again in a certain country. In Mexico, for example, every woman I interviewed, it was all about chapaderas, like this part in your hips, and everyone was obsessed with it. So it just became like a song that got, so it's like a word or a theme or a phrase that keeps revealing itself. And in terms of women hearing the piece who I've interviewed, I have never, ever had anyone feel anything but happy. People feel legitimized and seen and heard, and I always say to women, I'm going to take a piece of your story, and I may use it in a different way, and I tell them exactly what I'm going to do. So I don't delude people, Thanks.
Hi. I basically just want to say thank you. I went to the show on Tuesday. I'm a student here at the Kennedy School. We have a thesis due in about a week and a half, and once or twice someone comes here and just shows you why you're here. And thank you.
Thank you very much.
Hi, my name is Heather Thomason. I was in the production of the Vagina Monologues that we did this past February. Right before the production occurred, which was only, it was only one night, the Crimson came out with an article which was a review of the show. It turned out really not to be very much of a review, but a commentary on the piece. And they seemed to be, the writer was under the impression that really the show didn't really work toward stopping the objectification of women at all. I was thoroughly unimpressed with the article because I wholeheartly disagree. But I was wondering from that standpoint, how, as a, since you are a playwright and to some extent this started, as you're trying to, this is your career, how much did you have to sacrifice of the mission, talking about very sensitive subjects which a lot of people aren't comfortable with? How much did you have to sacrifice in terms of the real deep down details in order to help the commercial success of the play?
Nothing. Nothing. I didn't edit one thing.
Good.
No. And I'll tell you something interesting. If you plan to be a political playwright, it's a great thing, but it's really a life of struggle. And part of it is that what either happens is you die, or the world allows you in eventually. You know what I mean? But it doesn't matter, because if you keep going, you're okay. Do you know what I mean? When I was younger, I used to go through fits of despair and depression because my work wasn't being seen or being recognized. But it really was a good thing, I see now in reflection, because it allowed me to become who I was before I got successful. And so when the commercial run happened, if anybody ever suggested to me, which by the way they haven't, I mean certain countries have asked me if they can cut the cunt piece or cut this, and the answer is always no. But I was in a position where that was more important to me than me being successful. And because of that, oddly, it's allowed me to be successful. It's this strange paradox. It's if you commit yourself to a vision and what you believe in, it will be a very difficult struggle, but when you get there, you'll be there, it turns out, and not somebody else,
Hi, I'm just wondering if after hearing so many stories of real cases of rape and violence, now when you see a lot of the commercial films that are out about, serial murderers who kidnap women and torture them and all that, do you have a very hard time just somehow reconciling that? Because I find that actually I get more upset about seeing a group of people sort of vicariously enjoying seeing that almost than I get upset about hearing about actual events. And I also seem to be the only person who often gets that upset about that. So I'm just wondering what your reaction has been.
Well, it's funny you bring that up. I've stopped going to movies. I have. I can't bear them. And I get too depressed, it turns out. I cannot watch women be violated or objectified anymore. I can't watch it. And I've really made a decision that I'm moving away from that culture, that I'm not participating in it anymore, because it's too deadly to my cells. It has too harsh an impact. And I don't want to watch women be violated for any reason. There's no reason. There's no reason. Wait.
We have time for a couple more questions.
Couple more questions.
My name's Julia Fawcett. I'm a freshman at the college, and I was also a part of the B-Day cast when Harvard did it in February. And I consider myself, I think I come from a pretty liberal, open-minded household. But when I got the script before, I hadn't heard much about the play. When I got the script and, realized that I was going to be part of the cast, and I read the script, I was just really uncomfortable. I was like, oh my God, I'm going to have to be, up in front of a million people, including my parents, talking about my vagina, and I just don't know if I can do that. Was there any point when you were writing the Vagina Monologues where you thought, I can't write this down. And if so, how did you overcome that?
Well, not only writing it, but then performing it. When I first started performing this piece, I was so terrified. I used to get, in the middle of the piece, I'd have this flash, I'd go, what am I doing? I'm talking about vaginas in front of people. And by the way, it still happens. You know, there are moments where an audience will be really quiet, like I did a performance for a corporate audience. Oh my God. It was like 200 corporate presidents, and I'm telling you, not a laugh in the house. Okay? And it was literally like I was doing the orgasms and I'd be, ha, ha, right? Okay, I thought to myself, I'm going to take out a gun and blow my brains out, you know? And actually, at one point in the piece, I almost just went, okay, it's not working, it's okay. All right, I'm going to go home. And then I had a revelation, a profound revelation, which was, you're not doing this to get them to approve of you. That's not why you're here. You're doing this so they'll be transformed and they'll come to love their vaginas and love women's vaginas. And your job is not to get their approval. Your job is to hold that in any reality. And it was one of the greatest lessons of my life, because I just went, okay, we're going for it. And at the end of the piece, the entire audience stood up in mass. And I went, you know nothing that's going on. You don't know anything. Just be true to what you're there for, no matter what you're in the face of. Just keep going. It was a great lesson. So yes, I'm terrified all the time. I'm standing on a stage in Bulgaria talking about liberating vaginas and the revolution. I'm thinking, there's like mafia people in it. And I'm talking about policemen raping women. You just keep going. And you keep going, and you trust the vagina spirits to protect you. You know, I mean... I think one more.
Hi, my name is Alison Yates. I was at Taking Back the Garden. And when we all left and we finally were able to speak again from being so awed by the performance, the question among the group was, what's next? What are you doing next year? Are you adding monologues? What are the plans for V-Day?
Well, thank you for asking that. We're doing a whole bunch of things. V-Day obviously is going to be in more and more cities next year all around the world, and we're hoping it will just spread and spread and spread. Hopefully next year we'll get up to 400 colleges. We were able to give away this year between $2 and $3 million, and the Vagina Monologues production alone has already made $2 million, and we think by next year, at the end of its run, it'll probably have raised between $4 and $6 million, which is really astounding. But we're doing more V-Days. We're doing the International Stop Rape Contest, and I really urge students at Harvard and women at Harvard to participate, which is to come up with action plans, bold, outrageous, courageous, innovative, cheap action plans to end rape, and then to send them in, because we'll be picking winners and giving grants to implement those ideas. We're doing something called the Valentine's Day campaign with Lifetime, where we're having people send in postcards with their stories that we're going to deliver on Congress on V-Day next year to make violence against women a #1 issue. We're going to be doing, HBO is doing, we've just finished shooting the film, and it's really exciting, and there's all kinds of great interviews with women about their vaginas, and as well as the performance, and that's going to be aired on HBO next V-Day, and what we're hoping is that it will stimulate vagina dialogues all around the country afterwards, so people can tell their own stories and really come up with action plans in their own communities to end violence. So that's the general plan for next year. And I'm going to work, I actually talked to Carol Gilligan today, I'm thrilled to say, and we're working on something called the Youth Campaign, and I'm going to create a series of monologues for young girls that they can perform in high schools and junior high schools based on their experiences, so we can, you know, that's the general plan. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much.
She absolutely rocks. So we all wish her good luck with her show. Catch it if you can.
Thank you very much. I have to go do the show now, so come and see it. I'm doing it for 2 weeks, but then it's coming back with 3 other great actors, and it'll hopefully be here for a long time, so come and see it, okay? Bye.